now, and it wouldn't make a big difference, and it would stress me out so much to make it.
Totally understand. Totally understand. Okay, I think we are good to go. I think everything is set. And do you have any questions for me before we just start?
Uh, yeah, like what do you think the direction of this is going to go? Are you just open to let's ramble for a bit?
Yeah, it's just open conversation. I have no primary agenda. Like I said, I have a few questions planned. I'm kind of going to ask you just to describe like what is business as usual for you. What, if anything, in your business is different in the last 3 weeks, um, last 2 weeks. I don't even know how long it's been since things have shifted. And then
Continue.
kind of like what what you're seeing with your both like with your clients and people that you're working with, like how do you shift strategies? I mean, a lot of people that I'm seeing that I'm working with right now are like, do I just talk about coronavirus pandemic, blah, blah, blah? Do I stick to my original content? Do I do both? Like, if I do business as usual and try to talk about the things that I'm actually qualified to talk about, does it sound like I'm ignoring the problem? Or like, are people, you know, like how does somebody who is a business owner or an entrepreneur or a digital marketer, like how do they respond, how do they react, what are some strategies, what are some, and even like not just with clients, but like what have you seen marketing wise that have been like, without calling any companies or brands out, like major fails versus
Sure.
like really smart um examples. And then if we have time, like maybe a little bit of some of the personal challenges, just like, the shift from, even though you do your work remotely and you're used to working from home, now you're suddenly at home with other people. um, and then yeah, kind of see where that goes, and I'll just ask
All right.
whatever comes to my mind.
Sounds
And
good.
of course, you know that I edit, so if you are like, yep, pass on that question, I can't answer that, or outside of the scope of my expertise, or you need to think about something for a minute, then that's totally fine as well.
All right.
Cool. All right, then let's just take a deep breath in together and out. Noel Bosco, thank you so much for joining me on The Creative Imposter, especially for this special, special series on what to do when everything freaks out and goes haywire in the world.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for thinking that I know what to do.
You seem very confident and very wise. So I think that we'll find out. So if you could just for a moment share with us a little bit about the work that you do and the types of clients that you typically work with.
Sure. So I'm a copywriter. I'm a digital copywriter. I work mostly with B2B companies. I've been trying to do work with nonprofits lately. Uh, but I think what most of my clients have in common is usually that they're not big organizations. They're usually smaller or more local, and they have a very defined audience.
And what types of industries are you typically working in, or what are some examples?
So I work with mostly digital companies, so companies that sell software or that sell services, especially remotely. So like web designers, I've done that. Um, but I am also doing work with retailers right now, or yeah,
Like mostly online retailers or people with like physical brick and mortar retail?
online retailers. Yeah.
Awesome. So then, in general, in your life and work, I know that you primarily work remotely and from home, and you are a member of our Chicago-based women's co-working group. So I get to see you once a week. So I kind of know what your day-to-day is like on Friday mornings, at least. But give us a little picture into what does business as usual look like for you? What does your day-to-day type work feel
Uh,
like?
yeah. So business as usual is I deal with urgent things in the morning. So check in my email, see if there's anyone that I need to reply urgently or not. I try to get all of my creative stuff done earlier in the day, so drafting, brainstorming, coming up um, with ideas and structures. Uh, and I try to do all my administrative stuff in the evening because by then my brain is gone.
And your creative is like copy for email campaigns, websites. What are the
Yeah.
actual like deliverable tangibles?
Yeah. So I do a lot of emails and websites. My emails are usually newsletters or cold email campaigns. So trying to find new clients. I help people find new clients with cold emails that are not terrible to get, that you wouldn't immediately delete and send to spam.
I think that this is a skill that is quite hard to actually master because I would say that cold emails, marketing emails, I don't know, it's really easy to be in the deletable category.
It is. It's very easy to go from okay to being completely insufferable with a few words. So I have to keep an eye on that.
And like typically, what is a full schedule of clients for you? Like how many clients are you typically working with? How many hours per week are you generally working? That sort of thing.
I don't think I could give you how many hours per week because there are some weeks that I work 10 hours and some weeks there I'm 50 hours. It depends on how many projects I am packing at the same time and when those deadlines will fall. I try not to work with too many clients simultaneously, in the sense that it's difficult to put yourself in multiple people's shoes at the same time. So write with different voices at the same time. So I try to keep one project in drafting stages and another project in revision stages simultaneously. So my ideal would be two clients simultaneously. Sometimes things overlap or things get delayed and I end up with more work. Um, and that's how you get the 50-hour weeks.
And how far out, like what is timelines? So how I know for me, I'm going to call myself a last minute marketer since I do pretty much everything myself. And like right now, if you go to my website, you will see some sections, some new sections on the website that the web company that I'm working with created the layout, but the text is not correct. It's like placeholder text still, or
Mhm.
it's like stock images still, because my job is to create the copy myself. But how far in advance for your clients are you typically like creating email campaigns or marketing messaging?
For events that are known events, so promotions that they always run in a particular month, most of my clients try to get that done sooner rather than later, because it allows for more testing and revisions and whatnot. In general, I would say 2 months out for other more regular communications, so newsletters and things like that. For websites, is it gets done when it gets done. They usually somebody decides that they need to change their website. We figure out what is the timeline that works, and when it's done, it goes up. But I wouldn't give you a timeline for.
Do you do social media copy or campaigns at all?
I do not. I know people that do, and I know that they try to keep it not too much in advance because of how quickly things can change in social media. But they usually have at least a month of posts that they know are going to go up.
Okay. And so over the last couple of weeks, when everything sort of came to like a screeching halt, I feel like it kind of was like a slow, like caution, and then all of a sudden it was like a screeching halt in some cases. What have you seen happening in terms of either your clients or just in terms of digital marketing in general over the last couple of weeks with the I don't even know what to call it. I don't like these buzzwords of social distancing or self-quarantine or pandemic. Oh, I know the marketing phrase that's really making me crazy right now is uncertain times. If I
Oh.
See, I just saw a car commercial, an OnStar call or car commercial for like that OnStar security and navigation thing that was like, we know it's uncertain time. I'm like, no, don't use that phrase anymore. I hate that phrase so much.
Uh,
But what have you seen happening in the last couple of weeks?
I've seen, I think like most of the reactions from businesses that I've seen can be like divided into two, maybe three categories. The first one is we were not prepared for this at all and didn't even think about it. And our promotions went on as usual. And then later we realized that promoting a service that would get people together in one room might not be the best idea. And we're going to quickly apologize for it. Um, and the other group that I've seen is people that reacted very quickly to try to capitalize on it, which is where things like these are uncertain times, buy our car, might come might come into play, which yeah, they drive me crazy too. And the third group, which is the group that I personally think has been reacting the best, is the group that has been putting their audience first. So instead of trying to capitalize on, oh, our service would be great for this, you should buy it, uh, trying to make accommodations so that their clients or their customers could continue to, live as usual or interact with them as usual with the accommodations that they might need. So companies that, people that have been trying to, in less than a week, move an entire conference from being let's all get together in this room to hey, we're going to move this online. Bear with us, it's the first time that we're doing this sort of thing, but we still want you to get the information that you were going to get. We still want you to hear the talks that we were going to present, so let's move online. And that sort of reaction is what I feel has been the best one or the ideal reaction for something like this. Um, Trying to, yeah, put put the audience first without trying to milk them dry of their money.
Yeah, it's kind of a fine line because obviously, depending upon the cash flow in your business, depending upon how much of a buffer you have, depending upon, a lot of different things, you still need to make money in order to
Yeah.
stay open. And in order to do that, you still need to have sales. But what would you say? So putting the community first, putting the clients and the customers first. So what would you say is the balance right now? Like typically, do you have kind of a formula that you like to follow for messaging, like sales versus information, entertainment, and nurturing? Like, do you have sort of a standard format that you follow? And would you say that it's different now than what it typically would be?
I mean, I use many formulas depending on yeah the kind of message or the kind of product. Um, I think what would change right now, or what I've seen change personally in the clients that I have, because they're usually smaller operations, um, they're more willing to be vulnerable because a situation like this that affects literally everyone everywhere. It doesn't matter where you are in the world right now, you're probably affected by this. And nobody knows how long we're going to continue in this. I feel like it's easier for some of my clients to come closer to their audience and say, hey, this is hard for me too. I don't have all the answers. I'm not dealing with this in the perfect way. Let's figure it out together. So more of an informal tone, I would say,
Hmm.
more like um, a closer tone with the audience. Yeah.
So, do you have for your clients, was there anyone who like sort of, I mean, not naming any specific names or anything, but did you have, I know like in my business and in some other entrepreneurs that are more service based, there were some clients who sort of like put a hard stop on, hang on, don't do anything right now. We need to pause our contract. like we're not sure what we can spend money on. We need to like quickly assess the situation. Have you had any of that? Have you experienced any of that? Or have your clients, in some cases, kept up like so far they're still staying consistent with what they want to hire you for? Or has anyone like accelerated and said, we need more communication now?
I haven't had anyone accelerate, so to speak. I've had, like, I did talk about this, and most of the response was like, let's keep it at the bare minimum for now
Mm.
until we know or we have a better idea of which direction this is going to go. So more than I haven't had anyone stop, but I have seen more of a slower um, a slower push to get new business or new clients or new audiences. Sort of that's on pause. It's more trying to maintain the relationship with their current audience.
And how does that shift in terms of like languaging for when you're trying to nurture and support existing customers and maintain those relationships versus like language that's used for like new client acquisition? Like what if you were to describe what's different about that messaging, what
Um,
would you say? For someone like me who has to write all their own copy.
I would say it's a really good question because it has no short answer. So I am obviously going to give you a very short answer. I would say when looking to expand your audience to get new clients, it's usually the case that I'm going to be writing things that speak to people's problems and the solutions that I'm going to be giving them. Or the on the other hand, when I am trying to nurture an audience I already have, clients I already have, it's usually more about the connection, like the human connection between my client and their audience.
Do you have any examples that you have that are in your mind of like a campaign shift that either is somebody that you've worked with or something that you've seen? Like, for example, I had that OnStar. I think it's Buick. I think it's Buick that's pushing the like OnStar, reliable, safe, secure. You're doing the right thing for your family in these quote unquote uncertain times. Which I never noticed Buick ads before, so maybe it's working, but
I mean, do you suddenly want to buy a Buick? Because
no, I
that's
do
the
not.
only, yeah, then it's not.
Do you have any examples of things that either your clients or other things that you've seen that you think are like a really good example of this like nurturing client care kind of
um,
messaging?
not not my client, but I am subscribed to 10,000 newsletters because I'm that weirdo. And I have noticed there's always this change between people trying to sell a new product and people try to nurture, right? And like what I have seen, for example, is this coach, this ADHD coach. I'm not a client of his, but I am subscribed to his newsletter. And what I've seen in the language from that went from you or your kid is struggling with getting ready in the morning or putting things in their place at the end of the day. Um, Here is the solutions that I propose for that, or here is how we can talk about it, and I can propose solutions for you. So it's very specific for the problem, right? It's not your struggle with ADHD; is your struggle with this specific thing.
Hmm.
And when it comes to nurturing the audience, I'm with this uncertain times that we're living in. The messaging sort of changed from specific problems like getting ready in the morning for to something I wouldn't want to say vague, but more general. Like dealing with uncertainty is scary, it's anxiety inducing, it makes people that have ADHD, it's usually harder to focus on anything if there is something big and encompassing going on. It's just a constant distraction. So the language became more about that connection, because he also has ADHD, like that
Mhm.
connection that he has with his audience. Like, hey, I know that it's hard for us to remain focused when all of these news stories and everything is changing all the time. So here's some advice that I can give you that has served me in the past. So it's more like putting himself at the same level of the audience instead of this like super authority that you can go so that they can like he can fix your problems. It's, hey, we're both human and struggling right now. Let's figure it out together.
So it sort of seems like putting yourself in the mind of your audience member. Like, what are they dealing with right now? What are they thinking? What are they struggling with? That's like top of mind. And I think in this situation, maybe a lot of us don't actually know exactly what it is that we're struggling with. Like you said, the more vague or more general or more broad thing is like, I don't feel well right now, and there's a lot of information coming, and I don't know why. I don't know what my actual problem is. Maybe it's kind of just like trying to imagine what's happening in the mind of your audience member, and identifying with that to provide some kind of resource.
Yeah, so I think putting yourself in the mind of your audience is a good idea always.
Yeah.
I would say that the difference is where you position yourself in relation to that. Um, but the kind of language that you use is less the language of uh, an authority and more the language of a friend. Like it's more like a nurturing thing.
Yeah. That makes sense. And then I know for some of my clients, some of my podcasting clients who have a show that's representing a brand or a business or an organization, and a lot of my colleagues as well, and myself as well, the question that's sort of on your mind is like, okay, well, should I put out content, like in the case of a podcast episode, should I put out content that is specifically about coronavirus, COVID-19, social distancing, pandemic, like that is topical, even if that's not my area of expertise or that's not normally what my show is about? Or do I stick with the content that I know that is this, not the same, but that is like consistent with what I typically publish? Because are people only wanting to hear things about current events, or are they wanting a distraction and relief from current events? So, how do you advise someone who's putting out some kind of content, whether it's in written form or whether it's in audio form or whatever? Do they address current events? Do they stick in their lane? Like, how do they make that decision?
I think ideally you would want to combine the two, but in a specific way. Like the main thing is to be as specific as possible. So if you have an expertise, stick to that. And if you can bring something to the table relating to common experiences with the coronavirus that is related to the expertise, then do that content first. So I have a client that is an HR consulting firm, and instead of just talking about coronavirus, what we did was send out content that was related to coordinating teams when working from home.
Hmm.
So specific to the HR consulting firm, but that can be used in this particular time that is top of mind for people in this particular time. Um, that ideally that would be the kind of content that you can put out.
So, again, getting in the mind of your listener. If your listener is coming to you for HR, then they're probably not looking to you to like solve their anxiety problem unless their anxiety problem is managing their team remotely. And then they
Pretty
can look
much.
to you for that. Gotcha. So, for you personally, as we mentioned, like you primarily work from home and remotely. So the actual environment of your work and how you do your work hasn't changed that much. But what has changed for you over the past couple of weeks?
I think the biggest thing that changed is having people around because I live with my husband. We live with a friend, and they are both here working from home. And that was a change. Is suddenly there's movement and there is noise, and people want to talk to me, and I get interrupted. Um, which is it's very minor compared to suddenly changing my entire routine, but it's there. And I would say that the other thing that really changed is how there's this one thing that is on everyone's minds all of the time, and it's everywhere and you can't escape it. And it's hard to focus on work when I feel like, oh, I should be more informed about it, or I should, oh, I totally can stop work to read this news article that probably has new information that I must know. And setting those boundaries is harder when there's this big collective anxiety um, that is impossible to ignore, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Focus? How to focus when there are suddenly other people in my workspace, like right there. And there's all this other, like, I just know I'm going to miss something if I don't check the news or the media or whatever,
Yeah.
which is maybe true, but I don't know. Things are changing, but they're also not changing. So I don't know.
But it feels irresponsible to not read it. Like it makes me anxious, but also it makes me anxious to not read it because I feel irresponsible.
Yeah, like there's a part of me that's like, should I be out getting groceries right now? Should I be there the moment the store opens? No, I have enough food, but how long? How long do I have enough food? Maybe I do need more food. Like my brain is like, should I be?
Yeah. With the food thing, and that's another thing. Like a lot of people are thinking exactly that, and half of those people are going to run to the store because they can't ignore that like thought in the back of their mind, and that contributes to the store is no longer stocked as often as it should be, and that makes everyone else anxious, and it's just this big snowball that it's hard to stop.
So, do you have any tools? Do you have any tools or practices in place or things that you're doing to sort of help mitigate that disruption in your usual focus between these two like external forces of like people and huge overwhelming anxiety over information and media?
Yes, I feel like a lot of these tools, I guess, are extensions of my usual coping mechanisms to focus because it's hard for me to focus in general with not without any pandemics around. So I'm relying on a lot of the same coping mechanisms, just more of it. The first one is, well, headphones. Just try to ignore everything. Headphones with background noise, not music because music is just too much fun and I don't work with it. um, Having timers so I don't work in big chunks. I usually work in like 20 minutes, like 20 minutes at the time, and then I pause and I stretch or I look out the window or I walk around or move. Um, I try to keep limits at the time of the day where I can check the news or I can check social media and things like that, which that is actually has been the harder one
Mm,
to be consistent with this because of that anxiety.
mm-hmm,
And related to that, the one thing that has served me the most in the past few days is compassion to myself, like being
mm-hmm,
understanding that hey, it's a big thing that is going on. It's a big, scary, anxiety inducing thing, not just for yourself, but for everyone. It's okay if you're not working as much as you were before. It's okay if you're not as productive or if you're not as focused as before. It's okay if today it took you 2 hours to do something that would have taken you 1 hour 3 weeks ago. It's fine. Just get up tomorrow and do it again. And it gets easier when you accept that you can't control everything, and you just have to keep going, I guess. Just not beating yourself up.
Mhm. Agreed. If you were to look into your crystal ball and see the future of content marketing in a general in a general scope, if you were to look into your crystal ball and see the future of content marketing in a general scope or copywriting specifically for smaller businesses and online companies, do you see any changes that you project in the future that are sort of like that will be residual or ongoing as a result of this experience?
I think it's hard to tell like big encompassing changes because those are always there. Like on the surface, marketing and copywriting are always changing, but the principles that serve copywriting or advertising in general are the same. The principles of building a genuine connection with your audience or speaking to their actual problems, and they're giving solutions that you believe in, and speaking to what they want instead of what you want. Those sort of things are never going to change. It's all about the delivery. Um, and I think what I have seen in the last couple of weeks, that I think is going to be the thing that stays the longest, is a language of solidarity that has been propping up in different places. Um, a language of taking care of not only your audience, but also urging your audience to take care of their loved ones and their friends, and speaking not just to an individual, but to an individual in their role as part of a community, is
Mm.
something that I have seen in the last 2 weeks, um, and that I expect is going to stay for longer.
Cool. That's an awesome thought. Is there anything else that you want to share with listeners or anything else that's on your mind that you think the creative imposter audience really could hear right now?
Yes. Focus on what you can control. When something this big gives us this many anxious feelings and anxious thoughts, the thing that helps the most is to do something. So talk to your neighbors if you have them. See if you can volunteer with your city. A lot of cities are putting together community response teams to help those that are probably more isolated. And being part of that, being part of a group of people that are connected, even if it's just through the phone because nobody can see each other in person right now, and making sure that those that are more vulnerable than you are well taken care of. It's a good thing to do, and it also gives you a sense of control, and it sort of makes those like anxious thoughts less pronounced.
Awesome. Thank you. That was amazing. That went by really quickly.
Yeah.
Um,